Welcome to Overkill Reviews. I'm Martin Popoff.
I'm Sarah, and today we're doing a tag team Dad Rock edition. So this shouldn't surprise anyone. Martin and I actually have a lot in common with our music tastes. We both love Scorpions, Rainbow, Clutch, Candlemass, Exciter, Razor, the list goes on. So today we're talking about a band that we both love.
Yes, and it was actually kind of funny. We were actually both at the Uriah Heep concert in February at the Phoenix. Amazing concert. Not only were we both there, we both sat down with Mick Box backstage and interviewed him. What a lovely guy, the smiling Buddha of Uriah Heep, yeah. You know, the only original member back to 1969. And yeah, we are going to be reviewing Living the Dream, which is Uriah Heep's 25th record, out now on Frontier Records. It was a really energetic show.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. Right? The band, I mean, they've been together for, oh God, it's been what, 50 years now?
Yeah, pretty much,
And they had more energy than probably 90% of people that are a third their age.
You enjoyed it because you love the old Uriah Heep.
Yeah.
You brought your own records here, which is very cool. It is an amazing catalog of music. These are the records that did well in the States as well. This went gold, this went gold. Sweet Freedom went gold as well.
Which is why I'm kind of interested in doing this review that we're doing of their 25th studio album. Because honestly, I haven't really connected with Uriah Heep in a long time, but live, their newer songs, they did sound fantastic, just like their older stuff. So we're tag teaming the brand new Uriah Heep today.
You bet. All right, so Uriah Heep, who are they? Mick Box had a band called Spice in 1969, but then they changed the name. They got Ken Hensley in the band. They became Uriah Heep. They put out this record. In America, this was called Uriah Heep. In England, it was called Very Heavy, Very Humble. Basically, one of the first heavy metal albums of all time. They had a sound very similar to Deep Purple. They had the big honkin' Hammond organ in there. They even rehearsed more or less next door to Deep Purple. They became a pretty big band in the States. Through the 70s, their two big albums were Demons and Wizards and Magician's Birthday. And they became, you know, a perennial touring act through the States. At this point, they were essentially considered one of the big four of the UK major bands: Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, and Uriah Heep. They were constantly getting compared to Deep Purple, but as Mick Box will quip to anybody, the big difference was we had 5 singers, they had 1 singer. They only had Ian Gillan. So they never went completely away, but they just became kind of off the radar. But they more or less have a big sort of comeback with this album in 1995 called Sea of Light, which is the first of sort of 6-7 records that sound fairly similar and have brought the band back into prominence. So it's exciting to talk about this new album because they are making really good music.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got into the band in my early 20s. At that point, I started listening to more 70s rock and really enjoying the mysticism and kind of the variance that I found within the music. And the album that I first connected with, I think most people know, Look at Yourself. It's got the huge, massive hit single. And the reason why I started connecting with this record is because of a dad. Not my dad, but my partner's dad. We would go and we would drink in his garage and we would hang out with his dad and we would listen to Uriah Heep, and that was the band that we really connected on. I mean, these early albums had a massive, massive impact on bands like Blind Guardian. And so I think that they really set up a lot of the template for the fantasy themes within power metal.
Power metal, it's a good point. I mean, lyrically, this kind of leads to Rainbow and into Dio, and then you get kind of Maiden and the birth of power metal, but it really does start here.
So let's talk about it. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it vital? What's going on with it?
So yeah, Living the Dream, kind of interesting. What you have here again is kind of the latest record in a suite that starts with Sea of Light, I would say. Mick Box is there. He's the only original member. A very key thing about this record is you have a very young rhythm section in Dave Rimmer and Russell Gilbrook, who are dominant on the record. The drumming is incredible all across this record. And then you've got Bernie Shaw, who's been singing with them since 1988, Live in Moscow album. I mean, my first impressions of the album, I would say it has a very organic production quality. Some of the recent ones are a little bit more sterile or a little bit more stadium rocky.
Yeah.
I have interviewed Bernie about this album, and he says that Jay Rustin did an amazing job. They knocked this thing out in 19 days.
Yep.
He says they usually take about 3 months to do an album. Jay said, I can do an album in 2 months, and then they did it in 19 days. That's my first impression. I would say very organic production values, and, you know, I'm very amazed, but I would say more than anything, I found myself listening to the drummer, Russell Gilbrook, a lot on this record.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I automatically noticed that Uriah Heep knows exactly what it does well. They have great vocals. The Hammond organ has to dominate, has to be in there. They have a lot of sing-along choruses, and I think that's just because they're such a live band. They want to get on stage, and even if you don't know those tracks, you're going to be able to sing them along by the end of the song. And of course, that really, really amps up the energy. So there's a lot of parts about this that I thought, okay, like the standard template of Uriah Heep is here. We have the beautiful big vocals, we got the driving Hammond organ, we have the great guitar solos, all those other types of things.
So yeah, we're going to take a little listen to a song called Take Away My Soul.
What if you don't have a soul to take?
Take away my soul. See the look upon my face. That's forever. Losing all control. Trying not to fall from grace. That's forever. We make the same mistakes, but some they take much longer.
So there you hear a lot of the characteristics that people love about Heep. Very, very hooky choruses. You know, this record, again, very groovy from a drum and bass point of view. You hear Bernie there with a lot of power. He's a great singer. He says he doesn't know how he got this voice, but he thanks the man upstairs that he's got it. But it's a very important thing when you compare to a lot of the singers of his age. He's 62 years old. You know, we almost think of him as the young guy in the band because he does come in the late 80s. And he sings just fine, as, you know, we found out when we saw them live. He has no problem pulling this kind of material off.
Sings like a goddamn angel. Now I'm gonna play you a clip from one of my favorite songs from the album. It's called Falling Under Your Spell.
I see it, I feel it, temptation calls. I hear it, she haunts me as darkness falls. Standing in the hallway, and my head begins to spin with this brand new fascination. It's a game I can't.
So once again, you're hearing exactly what we've been talking about this entire time. The Uriah Heep signature sounds. They've got the organs, the guitars, they've got the drums, everything is going, it's big, it's epic. And there's also that musical differentiation between fast and slow. And this actually also happens on the album opening track, and it's the first thing that pulls you into the record. So again, Heep, they're playing to their strengths. They know what you want to hear.
Yeah, and an interesting thing about the harmonies that I found out on this, I mean, usually Bernie says that they have a little X on the ground and they all stand around and sing their different harmonies. On this record, he says this was one of the first ones where he essentially did all the harmonies. And Jay Rustin said, Bernie, when you sing that, you sound like Mick Box, you sound like Phil Lanzon. So essentially this album, most of the time you hear those classic Heep harmonies on it. It's almost all Bernie with maybe just a little bit of the other guys stripped in a little bit. You know, another thing that I noticed from that clip and basically from the album is that the guitars are not the most dominant thing. These are not super distortion pedaled guitars, really. There is a lot of organ. The organ really adds a lot of swells through it, and again, the rhythm section. So everything is integrated rather nicely, I think.
I know that we've been raving, and there is a lot of things about this record that I do like. That being said, you know, the phrase that I always use that you guys get bitchy about, I do think that if I were given the choice to listen to brand new Uriah Heep versus classic Uriah Heep, I would always, 99 times out of 100, pick classic Uriah Heep. And that is why this record is a little difficult to review. All of the moving parts are there. These guys are phenomenal musicians. I cannot deny the power of their live performance. Yet simultaneously, I'm not really hooked by this album. I doubt that I'm going to listen to it again. One of the huge things that hooked me about Uriah Heep was the general mysticism of the band. They were really into like Tolkien themes very early on, before all the metal got there. And so I think that just the lyrical themes of this record didn't really hook me. I appreciate the pure joy that emotes from the idea that you're grateful to be a rock band after 50 years. That is cool as hell. But lyrically, it didn't really resonate with me. It made me feel more like it was kind of a casino rock. I don't know. It's hard to articulate.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. They have kind of like deliberately moved away from that stuff. And obviously, songs get shorter and stuff. Having said that, there is an 8:19 song on this. But the thing that they like to do lyrically, which I think is kind of cool, is as a suite, they have this positivity thing, which I can only think about in one other band, and that's Yes. Yes is like that. Yes is almost like a religious cult lyric thing. You barely even can tell what they're talking about in the old days with John Anderson. But Uriah Heep likes that too. It's all about positivity and winning and good versus evil, and just sort of this kind of almost evangelistic quality that does get swelled up in the abstract when you see them live. I mean, when you see them live, it's this joyous thing, even though a lot of it is pretty heavy.
So it's a little hard to come to an appropriate verdict when all the moving parts are there, but maybe my soul hasn't been entrenched into the music the way that it should be.
Well, I think I would disagree with that, because on this one, we always have this debate about being disciplined with our skull ratings. This one I'm going to be not disciplined with skull ratings at all, because I have played this quite a few times, and I actually find it to be my favorite of the Bernie suite, which are all pretty high quality albums. I loved a couple of mellow songs on it. There's Waters Flowing and Dreams of Yesteryear, which are incredibly progressive things, and some neat acoustic guitar. And
not as good as July Morning.
Yeah, I know. And then it's, obviously David Byron is the man, right? Of course. And I love the heaviness of it. Grazed by Heaven, the first single, is super heavy. I love the organic quality to it. I mean, if I was to give one small complaint, it's a little bit along your line saying all the parts are there, like almost like a checklist. And I feel that even more so with modern metal albums that I want to criticize for. But this, I did even a little comparing with some of those recent ones, and I love the production of this. I love how heavy it is. There's a super fast double bass drum shuffle on one of the songs. I am liking a lot of the choruses and a lot of the different parts. So I don't know if you want to hear my skull rating first, or we're just going to wait. But how about we go back to you? What do you think for actual rating?
Oh, that's a tough one, because it is better than 2014's Outsider, which is their last record, which is a decent record. Like I did listen to it several times. But yeah, I also like to be disciplined when it comes to these skull ratings, and because all of the skill is there, the songwriting is there, there's a lot of quality here, and I really have nothing concrete to criticize. I want to give it 3.5.
But you can't give halves. So.
I can't give halves?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, you can give half.
Really? Oh man, I would have given a half on a few of mine so far.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't think you give halves. Jeez, I didn't have to torment myself so much.
Lisa, Dad doesn't know the skull rating system.
Okay, go ahead, sit on that fence, do it.
All right, I'm gonna give it 3.5 skulls out of 5.
Okay, well listen, I'm actually not even going to use my half card on this one. I would have used my half card on a couple others before, but no, I'm going to go 5 skulls out of 5 on this. And I know I have been disciplined at times and not disciplined on the skull rating, but I really I'm not feeling we checked off the boxes too politically correctly on this, because there is a lot of progressive stuff going on and a lot of cool lyrics, and I love the way the organ and the bass are basically seamless, and the guitar doesn't really dominate on it. So we often have these debates, me and my buddies, about the grumpy old metalhead thing, where you have to really kind of like be cynical about stuff. But I'm just gonna have to say, I'm gonna go 5 skulls out of 5 skulls.
You heard it here first. It's Dad Rock approves. We're doing something a little bit different this week with shoutouts, because we taped this pretty far in advance, and we weren't really sure what was going to come out. And we thought that because we have a lot of overlapping tastes, that instead we were going to recommend albums that we think each other should listen to and that you should listen to. So the album that I'm recommending to you, Martin, is an Ontario band called Freeways. They have a 7-inch that came out later last year. It's called Cold Front. It's only 3 tracks, but it sounds like a mixture of Thin Lizzy and Budgie.
Nice.
And it is super proficient, and I feel like this band's going to explode. So I
Excellent.
really think it would be up your alley.
Very cool. Okay. Well, I'm going to recommend you another little bit of dad rock, I
Oh,
suppose.
yes!
But it's down the Heep line of things. So Graham Bonnet, I love Graham Bonnet. He's the singer of what I think is the best Rainbow album, the best Michael Schenker album. He has a new album out called The Graham Bonnet Band. I know, very boring name. Meanwhile, Back in the Garage, boring album title. The album cover is horrible.
Oh,
the rest
great.
of it is all very cool.
So
They
much
sound
bad
like
stuff.
Alcatraz. The cool thing about this band that you might appreciate, Sarah, because of Heap melodies and interesting chord changes, he is like the king of interesting chord changes and putting cool vocal melodies on top of it. The
Great.
guy is like, I think he's 72 years
Wow.
old, and he's still out there singing. He doesn't quite have the same power of Bernie Shaw or the effortlessness, but he's been out there touring with Michael Schenker Group. So it's a little bit along the Uriah Heep lines, just this regal sort of British European sounding stuff, but
like that.
definitely in the dad rock category.
Great, and that guy is obviously also living the dream.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it for this edition of Overkill Reviews. Let us know in the comments if you want us to do more tag team dad rock albums, and thanks for watching.